This article comes out from Polygon today, 6 Days in Fallujah, which Sony Santa Monica, we were publishing that. We kicked this game off before Konami actually got it. This was around the time we also had a game in development, really far along in development. I've never seen footage leak. It's really surprising. It was these big-headed, I shit you not, political figures. Everything from like Washington to Lincoln to George Bush, who else? Clinton, obviously. It was like a brawler, like Power Stone, but with political figures. Fight! So I mentioned this bobblehead, big head game thing because around the same time, I mean, really?
fourscore and 7 years ago,
dude, we're doing the
our fathers brought forth on
bye.
this continent
Jesus Christ, fucking
a new nation.
Slender Man, fucking lookalike motherfucker.
You're a fucking idiot.
The Fallujah and the big head thing, they're both happening at Sony Santa Monica. I want to say that both games were kind of on the chopping block and we were kind of curious about what would happen, and then word eventually came down, might have been from Kaz himself at the time. It's like, yeah, we're not doing this. Both these games are too hot button. They're too political for a company like Sony right now. We're the biggest game company in America and in Europe. I think we might have been ruling the roost in Japan. It's like, we're not going to run the risk of splitting our audience at this point. It was disappointing because, you know, I hadn't played Fallujah, but I had played the political game, and it's fun. So off Fallujah goes. Next thing we know, it's at Konami. And then next thing you know, Konami kills it, and we thought that was it.
Goodbye, everybody.
I didn't know much about it then. I don't know much about it now, but I'll tell you what, I was curious about this game because it was such an ambitious, interesting idea then, and I'm curious about it still. I get so disappointed in games like this, but I'm always hopeful. I'm always holding out hope that someone's going to be able to really do a documentary video game. I think that is such a cool idea to create an interactive experience that is still compelling as a game, as interactivity, but it really is based on a true situation with the people who were there, and it gets into more than just shoot, shoot, bang, bang, but in the gameplay especially, it deals with the humanity. Now, I don't know how to do that. As a designer, I wouldn't fucking know how to do that. But it sounds like when these guys pitched this, or it was pitched to me by people at Sony, that's what these guys wanted to do. The article basically is the guy who's producing this saying, we're not taking a political stance. Well, you're not, in the sense that you're not making a patriotic rah-rah, we should have gone to Iraq, or he's not saying we shouldn't have. Okay, in that sense, you're not taking a stance. But one could easily argue the very nature of what you're choosing to exclude, such as the assumption that there were chemical weapons being used that affected civilians in this battle, for example.
Back in 2004, when the U.S. Marines bombarded and besieged the city of Fallujah, they did in fact use white phosphorus. In the beginning, they insisted that they were only using the chemical to create smokescreen, but later on admitted it was in fact used against combatants. Forces were accused of using white phosphorus and burned an 8-year-old girl.
The very nature of sort of removing that from the arsenal of the soldiers suggests that potentially you are making a political statement, even if that's not your goal. It doesn't matter. Can you make a war game that doesn't speak to the war? Yeah, of course. You can tell a story about Star Wars and the evil empire, and you can tell a story about a single stormtrooper, and it's just his own personal story. And it does seem that's what the team is going for. It's clearly a tactical shooter first and foremost, but they talk a lot about in the article, they want to create empathy for the American troops in the field. They want to create empathy for civilians that are trapped in between the battle. The guy says something interesting. He's talking about Call of Duty, and he talks about people that look at Call of Duty like a sport. And this game actually has real life people who fought at Fallujah. And he says, if somebody made a sport out of the killing of my son, I'd be upset. Our job now is to show people we're not making Call of Duty. So what he's saying all the right things as a guy like me who really loves the fact that maybe there's a game out there that can be made one day that makes you think about war and conflict, sort of more of a human nature aspect of things in an interesting way through interactivity. I think it sounds really interesting, and I think their heart is in the right place, unless this is just spin. I think the tricky part is, you know, I've heard this, let's just say this isn't the first time I've heard a developer promise that they're going to make a war game that really is more about the troops and what their experience was and how authentic it is and all this. I've heard this before. You've heard this before. I'll tell you when this started. This goes back to Medal of Honor. I remember being at the first Video Games Live, the symphony thing Tommy Tallarico puts on, and I'm in the audience and they're doing the Medal of Honor music suite. As they're playing this beautiful music, they're having a montage on the screen, the giant movie screen, of veterans from World War II talking about their experience. Well, of course, that's powerful, that's emotional, that's important. But I get really frustrated when game companies that make games set in war piggyback on the goodwill that most people would have for people who fought in wars, and also uses supplementary documentary interview footage as bonus materials or whatever, or even cutscenes in between to express to the player that, see, we're saying something important. We're about something.
Medal of Honor games are always about capturing the authenticity.
Having interviews, following veterans, getting a chance to see their lives and see their experiences. That history was always going to be part of it because that is core to the franchise and it's really important.
It gives you drive to do the best job that you possibly can.
There's a heaviness in the human soul when you listen to these veterans talk about their experiences and these civilians who were just trying to live through the war.
You understand at a deep level that what they went through when they were kids was something that they didn't want anybody else to go through.
This guy, Peter Tamte, I think it's how you say his name, is talking about, we really want to deal with Fallujah from the human experience. These are soldiers. They didn't question why they went, or if they did, they didn't openly question it when we interviewed them. It was about what it was like to be there.
All right, let's watch each other's back, baby. Watch each other's back. Got a weapon? Okay. Got another good. Now you got one? Go! 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 Jesus Christ! Fuck! Jesus!
So having 6 Days in Fallujah deal with not the big politics, the big picture of everything, but just these intimate little human stories that are happening on the battlefield, that's a great angle, okay? When I saw The Hurt Locker, I don't remember it so well that I'm sure there were political overtones. I don't remember the Jeremy Renner character really being all that political personally about the war. He had his own shit he was dealing with, and that's what the movie focused on. I would love to know, how are they doing that? Is it just cutscenes? Are they doing it through gameplay? Are they doing really interesting, great combat, tactical combat? But then when they want to do things like you have to save your buddy's life, or you're dealing with PTSD, or you go back home for a break, and how your life is back when you're back in suburbia for 6 weeks before you go back, and that's all playable. That's what I want people to ask these guys when they're interviewing them. I don't give a shit if it's political. I mean, if it was me and I had the freedom, I would make it political, but I'm a political guy. I like talking politics. But if you're going to say it's not political, that's fine. But if you got the guy in an interview chair and he says it's not political, it's personal, it's the human stories, then where in this article, or where in any of these, not just Polygon, or any of these guys covering Medal of Honor in the past, or any of these statements of like, we're doing something important?
It gives you drive to do the best job that you possibly can.
Could you please, journalist, I beg you, could you please ask them to tell you how they're doing it? Could you ask them to tell you what is the player going to experience mechanically, even if it is just watching a cutscene, which is the laziest way to do it? How are they going to do it in a way that actually delivers on what they're promising? Whether it's political or not, I mean, someday someone's going to come along and, hell, they've already done it. They did it right here. This is the most political war game I've ever played. I've talked about this many times on the stream. This is the first game I ever played that taught me that through play mechanics, you can get a message across better than with linear media. You literally cannot win this game without creating terrorists. That whole idea is so delightfully marbled into this simple little Flash game. That's the kind of shit I want these guys to be doing as a player and as a designer. I want to see someone do that, because I could never do it, but I know it's possible because I see it in this little game right here. 6 Days in Fallujah. Interesting. Interesting times, baby. I wonder if it'll actually ship this time. I'll tell you what, 15 years they've been trying to make this game. They got to have some reason they're trying to make it. It doesn't come across in this article why, though. You read this article, it seems like they could have well just made the game on some fantasy battlefield. Doesn't seem to really matter it was in Fallujah. But anyway, take it easy. Hope you're well. See you soon. Bye.